4 hours will come up long before they have completed that number of laps. Joining us in the commentary box at the moment is Lou McKinnon, a man who's driven the odd Group A car around this circuit. Lou, as expected?
Well, put it this way, I think anyone who had a few dollars in their pocket certainly would have put something on George Ferry. A little bit of a worry, I think, is the fact that the Skyline, for all its merits, it still isn't really that proven at long distance. It certainly had successes, but it's had notable failures. And I'm quite confident that the car sitting behind will, at the moment, be playing what I consider to be a waiting game. And at the moment, the likes of Larry Perkins, Peter Brox, and we have a major incident with car 32, the Pine Pack Mustang, and it certainly looks in a sorry state. This particular one is the one that Robbie Francevic is sharing with Bruce Anderson. And the helmet's off. It certainly does not look good news, Tony Palmer.
Yeah, bad luck for that team. They certainly had hope for an improvement, having Robbie Francevic in as the co-driver with Bruce Anderson. Ouch. The other one, identical, being run by Wayne Anderson and Stuart Robertson. That's not in a particularly good position at the moment. Obviously, it's going to stay there.
I'll tell you what, Robbie Francevic's had more marks than an Aussie Rules Grand Final this year, but nothing that he's touched recently seems to go well for him. It's bad luck for a very talented driver, and bad luck also for the Pine Pack boys who put a lot of effort into this race. Car number 32.
That is Robbie who was driving. He started the race. He was the quicker of the two. And I'm sure after the emotionalism has cooled down a little with Robbie, he'll be able to be philosophical about it. He's not the kind of fella that likes this kind of thing happening, and unfortunately he's had it happen rather too often in the last season or so.
So Robbie Francevic exits the Nissan Mobil 500 as race leader George Fury continues the stranglehold on the field at this stage in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, car number 30. The car, which of course won more races in the Australian Touring Car Championship this year, but actually lost the title by 5 points to Robbie Francevic because of the countback system. But for sheer volume of wins on the Australian circuit this year, nothing could lay a hand on the Nissan Skyline, number 30.
Well, Lou McKinnon, it's coming to this time of day now where we expect the first scheduled pit stops fairly shortly. And it'll be intriguing to see just how long the rubber is lasting on the various cars. We've already seen the rather poor record of the Jaguars in terms of tyre wear.
That's dead right. I think a lot of teams, though, would have looked at the conditions, looked at the track, and they would have made their compound changes quite early, or made their compound decisions rather quite early in the day. One thing to worry about on this particular track is that we've got to remember that one swallow certainly does not make a summer, and it's a question certainly of being there at the end of the 4 hours. And I'm sure as George Ferry no doubt thinks, he's got to conserve his car, and he's got to try and make sure that he's there when the checkered comes down at the end of the day.
37 seconds the gap now between Fury and Perkins. The order: Fury, Perkins, Brock, Crosby, Harvey, Richards, Soper and Charlie O'Brien. Tom Walkinshaw languishing down in 9th place at the moment after his pit stop. The other Jaguar, the rather unfortunate pit stop, is back in 10th place after taking far too long to fit a new set of tyres.
Once again, along the waterfront area, we pick up our race leader via our helicopter, showing just how tight this circuit is. Sometimes with the cars turning from left to right-hand turns, you don't really get the layout of the circuit. But from the air, you see just how tough this course is on man as well as machine. I think you'd agree with that, Lou.
Well, for sure. This circuit is an absolute killer, and as we've already seen from the likes of Graham Crosby this morning Wayne Wilkinson really in the warm-up session, one mistake and you have a major problem. And as I say, this race is 4 hours long. They have to conserve their cars, they have to conserve their tyres, and as I say, they just have to be there when that checkered flag comes down.
Of course, that's not the way they run touring car races in Europe. Over there, the rules are that you start off as quickly as possible, and if it looks like it's going to break down, you blow it up.
Well, I don't know. I think that the approach to this race, we've had a couple of drivers critical of the circuit, but let's keep in mind the only drivers who have been critical of the circuit are the ones who have bent motor cars on it. It's the same set of rules for everyone. All those who are still out there running will be all smiles and very complimentary about it. It is a street circuit. It's different from a natural racetrack, and you have to drive it accordingly. And, for others to jump out and start bad-mouthing the racetrack, I mean, nobody asked them to come.
I thought that was amazing, actually, that Cros, even in the space of a day, had changed his view when he'd come into contact, or his co-driver had, with the wall.
No, that's okay. Cros will change his mind 4 times before the race is over.
Actually, just on the subject of Graham Crosby, I can only really consider it ironic that last year in the BMW, he actually caused around about $9,000 worth of damage. And when I say he caused it, he was actually driving when there was $9,000 worth of damage on the BMW. And he certainly had a different frame of mind last year than he has this year.
Well, Cros, one of the great colourful characters of motor racing, whether it's on 2 wheels or 4. George Fury, the quiet little farmer from Australia, in the Nissan Skyline. And let's get a word down on the pits, if we can, with Tom Walkinshaw.
Remember the steering we gave the Wellington weather? We said it was cold, windy, and it was going to be a wet race. It hasn't turned out that way. In fact, it's quite warm. The surface of the road is much hotter than people predicted. One man that was caught out was Tom Walkinshaw, and Tom, that Dunlop tyre became rather stripped much earlier than I guess you would have expected.
Yeah, we're showing some signs of Tourette.
That's an understatement. Tom, were you surprised at the hot pace early on with the leaders?
No, it wasn't really very fast. We knew that it was going to be difficult in the beginning, so we decided one car would try and cover the leader, and we would just keep our other car out of trouble, because you couldn't come through from 10th up to the front. So things were fairly well the way we were expecting up to now, except for the problem with the tyres, which meant we were about a second slower than we were expecting for about 20 laps there.
Does that now mean that you've changed compound and perhaps gone something to a little firmer?
Yeah, we changed on a harder tyre, and we made the tyres last long enough so that we don't have an extra pit stop, so we're not really in too much trouble.
Okay, best of luck for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Interesting tactics from Tom Walkinshaw. They've gone to a harder compound. Now, obviously, they needed a harder compound, but Tom's claiming they've gone to one that is hard enough to last them, really, to their scheduled pit stops. It'll be intriguing to see if his theory works out. And we'll have 2 Jaguars in that case, because we assume they fitted the same tyres to Armin Hanna's car, with Denny Holman in it at the moment. We'll assume that both of them have been shod the same, and that they might be late sleepers, because they're certainly capable of race pace, and we'd expect them to come through a little later on in the race. And certainly that the Skyline and Commodore dominance at the moment won't be lasting for the duration.
Here's Tim Slako, Kiwi by birth, and settled now in Western Australia in the Think Pink Rover Vitesse, sponsored by Alf Barbagallo Cars of Western Australia. Having a good scrap here, let me tell you. That's, in fact, if it is Tim at the wheel, that he enables the Jag to go through. He campaigns the races that suit him basically in Western Australia and South Australia, makes an annual trek to Bathurst, the Adelaide Street Meet, and of course has crossed the Tasman to run here this weekend.
And his co-driver, Inky Tulloch, who's the mayor of Mataro in Southland, one of the better-known New Zealand drivers in Big Banger saloon cars, has been an exceptionally fast driver over a number of years. More recently has tried rallying, and now is into Group A. Not with a great deal of success yet, but you can bet that if Inky Tulloch puts his mind to Group A racing, he'll have a competitive car, and he's certainly a competitive driver.
It's a very well turned out car, an Andy Rouse Rover Vitesse. I'm not quite sure if I'm struck on the colour scheme, but if they run short of sponsorship, I guess they can always approach Max Factor.
I would have thought it'd be a commentator's dream, Mike. You certainly couldn't miss it.
Larry Perkins coming through in car number 11. Larry, of course, still running second on the road. Peter Brock is third, so that gap has closed up a little between second and third. Perkins there in the 11 car, the NZ Connectors Commodore. And Peter Brock, there's Tony Longhurst, who went in earlier after that prank, which Tony was an innocent victim of. And he is back out on the road, and a fella who I think theoretically should have won this race last year, Tony Longhurst, absolutely superb in the wet. And it was a great disappointment that he went out with about 5 or 6 laps to go.
The gap now between Fury and Perkins is 40.3 seconds, so Fury's still pulling away in a reasonable sort of race, and I'd have thought that the race must be going precisely to his plan.
I would think so. They're a professional team. They'll stretch the car as hard as the car can possibly run. They know the limits of the car, despite the fact that celebrates probably its international debut out of Australia here today. But they've done a lot of work. They've run any number of kilometres on the car, and they know its breaking point. And I think George knows the limitations of street racing. He's not likely to poke it in the concrete and come back and apologise.
Armin Hana trying to work his way back up the field after that disastrous pit stop. And the order is still Fury from Perkins, from Brock, from Crosby. It's a magnificent sight, this circuit on race day, now extended 3.2 kilometres. A superb long circuit with plenty of long straights for the bigger cars to stretch their legs. And despite all the comments we've heard about it being a car braking circuit, it's the same for everybody, of course. And those that are still on the circuit are the ones with any chance of winning.
Here's Graham Crosby, car number 6, coming into the pit area. This will be a critical stop for Graham.
It's around about 7 minutes ahead, Mike, of his scheduled pit stop, but that's pretty close. The car remaining on the ground. They're not changing the tyres on this, which is quite a surprise. Topping it up with fuel, up goes the bonnet, so this spells a problem for Crosby, there's no doubt about it.
I noticed that Wayne Wilkinson wasn't even attempting to get into the car to take over the drive. Obviously there is a problem there. Wayne Wilkinson still standing without his helmet on. See if we can get a word in the window with Cros and see exactly what the problem is. Let's go down to the pits and see if we can get a word with the Cros.
But we might peer in there as well and just see what's going on. They're lifting what's called the cold air box away from the front of the car, and judging by my guess at this stage of the game, I'd say that the car is overheated quite drastically. Let's see whether we can have a quick yarn with Cros. He's talking with Les Small at the moment, the man that builds these engines, and Les is the engineer that in fact is behind Alan Grice's efforts in the European Touring Car Championship. Excuse me, Graham. What's the problem, Cros?
We appear to have a fairly hot running engine. The problem being that, you know, when you're following somebody really close, you've got no cooling because of the amount of air that they drag behind you. So it's impossible to follow real close. And the crash damage we done, I think we might have blocked a bit of the filter. So that's really where we are.
Perhaps loosened something up in the cooling system, which has now floated back in and caused an overheating problem.
Oh, that's too technical. We just don't have enough cooling going to the engine. Oil temperatures run about 145, which is about 20 to 25 too much. And water temperatures about 120, which is about 20 too much, 25 too much.
All right, Cros, I'll let you get back to it. Thanks, mate. We'll talk to you later. So Graham Crosby in strife in the Wang Commodore, and as you can well see, the car is overheating.
So Graham Crosby in the Commodore having problems. Another man who's had problems in a Commodore during this weekend is Alan Grice, but you've got Perkins and Brock running second and third as far as the Commodores are concerned, Alan. What about George Fury, though? This large lead that he's got at over 40 seconds, and you suggest only one pit stop the entire journey.
Yes, I think they'll probably get 2 hours out of a tank. The lead they've got is indicative of a car that's not using its tyres very much today. It's one of the situations that you often find when you're doing strange sorts of limited practice races, is that you do all your testing and your tyre testing and car set up on maybe a cold day, and then race day is hot. That's what we're seeing today. It's caught the Jaguars, I think, a little bit by surprise. I'm surprised that also that Cros hasn't changed tyres, just to be very definitive about his tyre wear. But in any case, the Nissan's going to use less tyres than the heavier cars today, and that's certainly standing in good stead. I think it'll go 2 hours.
So barring any major mechanical difficulties, with the lead that it's got at the moment and the fact that it's only going to have to make the one pit stop compared to 2 that the Commodores of Perkins and Brock are going to make, it looks good. It's very good for the Nissan already.
Yes, the only, even at this early stage, the only thing that's going to beat that motor car would be getting in the road of somebody else's accident or somebody makes a mistake. It's shown the car speed today. It's after 38 laps, it was about 32 seconds in front, and it's increased that. It's certainly shown the car speed to win the motor race. It'll only be misadventure that brings it undone.
So perhaps the Commodores might have to go turbo as well to stay competitive.
Well, the big thing about Group A is weight, power and tyres. There are some very good tyre companies out there making some very good tyres. There's a great competition with the tyre manufacturers. My own people, Yokohama, are very much involved in that, but everybody's been developing better tyres, so that sort of looks after that one. Then you get back to straight out power. Everybody's looking after that one. Everybody's chasing power. So then the thing that you can't argue with is weight. That's what the man that writes the book says you have to carry, and that's the difficulty. I notice Perkins is just suddenly into the pits too. Maybe he's got a problem with tyres now.
All right, so Perkins, the man who was running in second place, let's see if they're making a tyre change. Yes, they are.
Yeah, first time in, you must change tyres. I'm surprised that the tyres haven't come off Crosby's car yet. It indicates to me that I think their engine problem, or maybe it's a water problem, is a major one. But that's a good change. You see, the advantage they've got now is they're not guessing anymore. They can actually take the 4 tyres and really study them and see exactly how they're performing under these conditions. Then they know that at the next stop, maybe they have to go to a harder compound, maybe to a softer compound.
Did you note a driver change there as well, Alan? I had my eye off the monitor for just a moment.
No, I didn't, but I would imagine that would have been, because looking at an hour 20, there's 2 hour 40 maximum per driver in the car in a 4-hour race. So I would imagine there'd be a stop. There'll be 2 stops for those sorts of cars, which means you put your second driver in the middle, and then Perkins will finish and do the 3rd stint again.
All right, so Parsons behind the wheel of that NZ Commodore. But there is the leading car. George Fury and his co-driver Glenn Seaton yet to make an appearance behind the wheel in this race. An hour and a half into the race, let's check the current positions. 50 laps have been completed, about a third of the way through. Fury leads from Brock, a change with Perkins dropping back into 3rd place after that pit stop. Then Harvey and Lowe and another Commodore, so it's Nissan Skyline 1st, Commodore 2nd, Commodore 3rd, Commodore 4th. In 5th place, Trevor Crowe and Jimmy Richards in the BMW, and another BMW now moving up into 6th place. That's Charlie O'Brien with his co-driver McIntyre. That's the situation then after 50 laps. Fury and Seaton, or rather George Fury alone, the only man on the leading lap.
You'll have noticed in that pit stop with Larry Perkins' car that they had, rather than the single nut to hold on the wheel, as is allowed in Group A regulations, they have 5 wheel nuts and did them up. The reason that they're able to do that is that it takes longer to put in the fuel than it would take for the difference of 1 wheel nut and 5 wheel nuts. So there's no real advantage in having the new system allowed in Group A on the Commodores, and most of the Commodores still run the system of 4 or 5 wheel nuts because they have time to do them up for the amount of time it takes to fill it up with gas.
One thing we also have to be careful of, Tony, or one thing we have to recall, in the last 2 races that we've seen Jim Richards out here, there has been incidents in his car where the crew have had problem putting that single locking nut back on the car. They actually have to go on very, very carefully, and they have to be turned a couple of turns before the rattle gun gets there. And if it's done wrong, like we saw at the Nissan last year in Auckland, then Jim Richards actually lost 15 minutes while the crew struggled and actually had to use an air nibbler to get the retaining nut off. It can be crucial.
All aspects of the pit stop, of course, are crucial. The time taken in there is time off the racetrack. The minor hassles that you have can turn into major ones when you get back on and find that you took a minute and a half instead of 35 seconds for the pit stop. It's usually